So my name is Nat. I'm an aquarist here at the Aquarium of Niagara, and I work primarily with our sharks and our stingrays and Squirt, our sea turtle. The one, the only, the legend.
My name is Sarah. I am also an aquarist here at the Aquarium of Niagara, and I primarily work with our herps, so our reptiles and amphibians, and then I also work with our bugs as well.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. Now, as y'all know, I have been spending some time volunteering when I am off the road at Aquarium of Niagara. And so it is my distinct pleasure to be bringing you an interview from the facility that I actually spend time volunteering at. However, this is not an interview about me volunteering. This is not even with the team I volunteer with, although I am very fortunate to call the people that I'm talking to today my friends. So Nat and Sarah are here to talk about Great Lakes 360, which is the brand new building, the second building now that Aquarium of Niagara has, which is pretty amazing just to think about a place with two buildings. And so we are going to continue our deep dive that we've been doing the last couple weeks into new exhibits at different facilities that have opened up this summer. And this one is close to home, quite literally. I've gotten to spend a lot of time there, gotten to go to preview events there, even gotten to do some volunteering in the building, because even though I'm on the marine mammals and birds team, every once in a while, they turf me over to Fish and Invertebrates when I'm lucky enough to get to go hang out with these cool people and cool turtles, and it's a lot of fun. So, yeah, you're going to get to hear all about that today, which I think is a really good time. Beyond that, you're also going to get to hear a little bit about what my experiences have been like at the aquarium when I spend time with the F&I team. So, yeah, if you've ever thought about volunteering at a facility, at a zoo or an aquarium, you'll get to hear a little bit about what I get to do sometimes and some of the fun experiences that I've had. And it's probably going to make you want to go volunteer right now because I get to have some pretty cool experiences there. But before we get to that, let's take care of some housekeeping. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any interview episodes or any Zoo News episodes, which come out each Friday. Make sure that you are following along on the socials at Rossifari everywhere, except for TikTok, where it's at Rossifari Pod. And don't forget that you can support the podcast for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. So with all of that said, it is time to head to my aquarium. Yay, it's so cool. And enjoy my interview with Nat and Sarah of the F&I team at Aquarium of Niagara.
But what I was just starting to say, and then I decided to hit record, was that when I first started volunteering here, I'll be really upfront, I was very nervous. It was very much imposter syndrome. And having done the podcast for multiple years, and like going in and going out, the idea of just going in and being at a place and getting to know people and such was scary to me, honestly. And Kristen and Allie on MMB were great and were the people who encouraged me to volunteer and all that stuff. But it was when I started talking to the two of you in commissary that I felt, I was like, oh, these are just weird nerds. And I say that in the most loving way. You're both nodding right now.
It's true.
Yeah. And I was like, and me too. And I love that. So I want to start today by just thanking y'all for making me feel like I had a home here right away. It's very cool.
Yeah, of course. I feel like that's sometimes the most daunting part of being anywhere new, like whether as an employee or just there temporarily to check things out, but having to meet a whole, fresh set of people and kind of see how everyone works and thinks and get a feel for that is very intimidating and very overwhelming. So
Yeah.
Great to hear that you felt comfortable.
Yeah. And I love that it was the other team, because at a lot of places there's like no fraternization. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And actually, going into that, and we will get to the actual topic of the day eventually, but I kind of wanted to also talk about yesterday. This was not planned. This has nothing to do with the interview, but I was volunteering for Marine Mammals and Birds yesterday. And about halfway through, they were like, we have too many people. And F&I, which is Fish and Invertebrates, which is y'all, are kind of under today. So they just threw me to y'all. And we had an entire, like, more than half a day of me doing stuff with your team, and specifically with the two of you. And I was like, I could not have planned this better for the episode if I wanted to. So I'm really curious, and I want you to be really honest. But what was that like for y'all? And what was that like, having me with no experience come in and like trying to help, but also like, was I a help, or was it just you had to train me on stuff and it didn't help? Like, what was that like? What was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was kind of fun because, I mean, Marine Mammals and Birds and Fish and Invertebrates, like we obviously socialize and stuff here, but we do such different things. Like our day-to-days look so incredibly different that I, for one, was really glad you got to hang with us for a while and just kind of see the more like fiddly stuff that we do and the more specific stuff that we do. I mean, I know you and I were working on doing a water change on the cave fish, which is very different from anything a marine mammal and bird person would do. And so while I do feel a little bad, I feel like we rushed you into it a little bit where, well, normally I would have taken, multiple days to train somebody on that. You did a great job. So it was kind of fun to see you pick up on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's a little bit of pressure on our end as aquarists to kind of be thrown a person and be told, all right, keep them busy or show them this, because then there's a little bit of fear that you won't show them something cool enough or something they might be interested in. But it's nice to hear that anything that we do is fun and interesting, just because it's by merit of being new and something you haven't really done before.
Well, and it's not even that, to be perfectly honest. I think like the reason I'm here, and the reason everyone is here, I think, but especially if you're volunteering, is because I love what we do, which is why, and you were apologetic when we went and swept out a room. And yeah, was that the most fun that I had yesterday? Absolutely not. But it was something that needed to be done. It was something that maybe hadn't been done in a minute. We won't go into details. And also you took the time to show me the systems in there and to explain the LSS and the two holdings in there and everything.
It's time for interrupting John.
Okay, just a quick reminder here that LSS means life support systems. We talked about that in a recent episode from the Greensboro Science Center, but I know not everyone hears everything, although you should. Okay, back to the interview.
And I had a blast, but even the part that wasn't a blast, I knew I was helping you, and I knew that means I'm helping animals that I love. And so, I will do that kind of stuff all the time. But you both gave me a couple of experiences with animals. And so let's talk about those for a minute and then we'll get over here. But let's start off with what we did early on.
Yeah. So yesterday, one of the things we did was we did a little bit of training with one of our brand new musk turtles. We're working on sort of desensitizing him to hands and people being near him, especially because he's going to be an outreach animal pretty soon. And he hasn't really had those experiences yet. So we got to do a little bit of training with him. And
hold on, what is his name?
His unofficial name is Hot Dog. And our other musk turtle is named Hamburger.
I love Hamburger.
It was a joke originally because I was trained you hold the turtle like a hamburger, and then it kind of just spiraled from there.
He's patty-sized.
Yes, he is patty-sized, if you will. So we were training Hot Dog the musk turtle, and John got to have his hand in the exhibit and sort of, give him that desensitization, which was really cool.
I thought he did a really good job too.
Yeah.
Like, he came up to my hand multiple times and I didn't get bitten.
You did not get bitten, although he did think about it very strongly.
My hand might have scooted away a little bit.
You can see the gears turning.
Yeah.
He makes that decision to bite. He goes in for it.
Yeah, well, to be fair though, one of the pieces of food that you had there was like literally the same color as my finger. I was looking at it and I was like, this is a bad antecedent.
When it's a herring day, it's a herring day. Sometimes herring are finger colored.
That was really funny to me, but that was awesome. And then we went up and did frogs and talked about that a little bit because that was cool.
Yeah. So we also got to do our featured feeding of our dart frog exhibit, which was really neat because for an aquarium that for the most part is aquatic exhibits, it's one of the very few terrestrial exhibits we have. And it's, I think, one of the only ones where we have like live plants in it, which was cool. And so we got to do the whole process from talking to the guests to pulling out the fruit fly cultures to actually feeding the frogs. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And we do a broadcast feed.
Yes.
And I've heard that term before, but that was my first time broadcasting feeding as opposed to a podcast. So that was fun.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess with sea lions, you don't broadcast them very often.
No, they do every once in a while, but I'm not get to do, no. Yeah, I throw in the mouth. And that was very cool. And then we also did a feature feed.
Yeah.
Specifically of the electric eel.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, it has been a long time since I have learned so much in a short span about an animal. Because usually I'm coming around, I know some of the basics, I'm going to learn some details. But let's just share about electric eels, because that blew my mind what I learned yesterday.
So again, similar to our dart frogs and the featured feed for that, we just kind of go through a start to finish process of kind of talking any guests near the exhibit through what to expect for our feed, kind of showing them that food. So you got a good look at that. And then we are also joined by one of our fantastic educators who also kind of serves as a liaison between the aquarists and the guests themselves, kind of talks those guests through the feed again. And then we actually got to head into the backup and feed our eel, which seemed like you had a great time doing, just sprinkling worms in, not the most fancy or complicated of feeds, but it's always a great time to watch that eel kind of forage for food on its own.
And some of it was foraging, but some of it was like straight up like snapped out of the water.
Very quick with it, yeah.
That was cool.
Lickety split.
Yeah. And there were two things in particular that I learned that I did not know, which is an electric eel is not an eel.
Correct. They are not a true eel. They're actually in the knife fish family.
That's weird, but cool. I
Yeah.
like it. And then the other thing was, can you just explain about like the organs, like what we were talking about?
I might have to fact check myself for this one. So electric eels possess 3 organs that they use to kind of produce that electrical charge or small amount of voltage. And this can kind of range in strength. So they can use it in smaller doses or pulses to kind of sense their surroundings. Since their natural environment in the Amazon jungle is very low visibility, they live in very dark, murky water. They're not very reliant on their eyes to kind of maneuver and get around. So they can send out those very weak electrical pulses, almost like echolocation or sonar, to kind of figure out where they're going. And then they can use that in stronger amounts when it comes to hunting. So kind of sensing their prey and stunning it. And then as a last resort, as a form of self-defense, they can produce a very, very strong amount of electricity, almost up to 800 volts, that they would use to defend themselves against any potential, predators, things like that. So in the past, we actually did a fun little experiment with our eel where we had put a voltmeter or some sort of electrical sensing thing. I forget the exact name of it. But we put a few probes in the water and just kind of tested to see if our eel produced any voltage when searching for food. And we actually did see a little bit of a spike whenever it found food and kind of pounced on it. So that was fun to see.
That's awesome. And those 3 organs take up basically all of the eel, right?
Correct.
This is what blew my mind. Everything that is the internal systems of the eel are in the head area, basically.
Yeah, like
right?
the first 1.5 inches, 2 inches at most. So anything that's not the fin on the underside of their bodies is just kind of packed up front. So all of their internal organs are smushed up front, and then everything else is just tail and those organs that they use to produce electricity.
That's so amazing to me. I came in early today to actually, do the aquarium, because it's amazing how you can spend 9-10 hours at a place sometimes in a day and not do a lot of it or see a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came in early today, and when I was up there looking at that eel, it was like I've seen electric eels my whole life. They have a really nice exhibit at the National Aquarium where I went as a kid, so I have seen electric eels my entire life, and I've never looked at one like I did yesterday and today now, and just being like, whoa, and like there's your head is everything. This is so weird.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was very cool. I enjoy, and I love that we're able to educate people like that every day. And who knows who remembers what, but I sure took it away and was very excited. So yeah. All right, very cool. So the reason we are actually here to talk today has nothing to do with anything we just chatted about, which all of my listeners are like, yeah, that's John for you. But there is a whole new building here at Aquarium of Niagara, and we are sitting in it now, and it is called Great Lakes 360. I'm assuming the name comes from the fact that it is animals found in the Great Lakes, and it's a circle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
several circles. I can't think of a single flat surface in here. As far as 90-degree angles go, there's maybe a handful.
Yeah, we don't have many of those.
If you're a fan of round buildings, come visit.
It's mostly what it's known for. It's the round buildings. Yeah. And this has been a huge undertaking here at the aquarium. I remember hearing about this, gosh, it feels like ages ago, and now it's a thing, and we're sitting in it, and there are guests here, and it's all very exciting. And so I wanted to talk about the animals here and the creation of it and all that stuff. But do y'all know where the idea of this kind of came from? And why is it a separate building? And just all of that background stuff. Whatever you know, throw it at me.
Yeah, so the building itself is not actually a new construction. It existed for, I don't actually know when it was first built, but 1971, I'm told.
Wow.
So the building was originally built in 1971 as the Niagara Gorge Discovery Center, or the Sholkoff Geological Museum, depending on who you ask. And it was just kind of a local showcase for a lot of different things. It went into some in-depth history for the area itself, kind of the Niagara Falls Gorge area. There was a lot of exhibits that kind of showcased mineral deposits and the geological formation of the area and things like that. And then back in 2019, I believe, they had to close, unfortunately, remained closed through COVID. And then we were lucky enough to have the opportunity to kind of come in as the aquarium and refurbish the building and kind of put, local species on display. So I believe that's the long and short of it.
Makes sense. Yeah, I love that it's a repurposed building, but also like it's so stinking new. Everything in here is shiny and nice, and there are no marks on the acrylic yet. And I will tell you, but when I first walked in for the first time for our little like preview thing, I squealed. It's so pretty. It's not even a better word for it. It's just it's gorgeous. Like the work. I love gorge.
That's a good one because of Niagara Gorge.
I like it. But why was the decision made, or what is the thought process behind going with local animals?
Yeah, I mean, the entire premise of this building is for people to, meet the locals, meet the animals that are in their own backyard. Because especially, here in Niagara Falls, people are oftentimes very unaware of what the animals that they might see, just walking outside every day would be. Especially living right on the Great Lakes as well. A lot of the people that are familiar with those fish are usually people who go fishing often. And so outside of that circle, you really don't have a lot of knowledge about the animals that are right there where you live. And so I think a lot of the thought that went into showcasing these local species is to get people acquainted with the things that they share the environment with, that are their neighbors. And I mean, that's really the first step in getting people to care about the environment and what's out there, is just educating them, letting them get really up close and comfortable with the animals that they share their home with.
Absolutely. And I think that, that's so important. I love asking people this question, and I do this a lot with ambassador keepers, but I'm going to throw it at y'all as well. Now that you have a building with all of the weirdos and all of the stuff that people might not expect to see outside of an aquarium, and then a building with the locals, with your neighbors, what do you think people are finding more interesting and more impactful? Is it seeing those crazy species, or is it realizing what's in their backyard?
I think personally, my favorite part of this so far has been seeing people come here and get excited that they recognize some of the species, because you never really have that recognition at the main building. I mean, people are usually there to sort of learn about the animals, things they've never seen before, like you mentioned. But I remember one day I was down here, right after we opened, and some people were looking around, and I heard it was a dad and his son. He was looking at our sport fishing exhibit, and he was like, whoa, like that's a channel catfish. I know that fish. I've seen that fish while fishing. And it felt like this guy was recognizing an old friend. And that was a really cool moment for me to watch. And I love that is the impact of this building, and that's what it's doing for people.
Oh, that's such a great story.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, I always find it fascinating how much and I mean, obviously, I'm a huge nerd and love this world in general, but I will see something that I have seen, in recent times in life, and be like, it's the thing. Especially with the turtles here, which we will talk about, because obviously I'm a huge turtle nerd, and yeah, there are some good ones here. So, yeah, it's a great building, and I think, like I said, what's been done with it is incredible. But I know that the location itself is also important to kind of the overall mission of Great Lakes 360. Can y'all speak to that?
Yeah, so it's really cool. The location of Great Lakes 360 is that it's actually, because it was the old Discovery Center, it's within the state park system of Niagara Falls State Park. And when people are walking on the trails, they'll walk right directly up to the door of this building. And then when they step foot out the building, they're directly back on the trail system. So this whole idea of meeting the locals and getting to know your neighbors and the animals in your own backyard hopefully means that when people make those connections, the second they leave our building, they're right there. They're with the locals again. And so giving people that connection will hopefully mean that, right as soon as they leave our facility, they're able to utilize that in a meaningful way.
That is really awesome. Yeah, that's very cool. And, speaking, we keep talking about Niagara Falls, and I take this for granted because we're here, but, Niagara Falls is kind of cool, I guess. And there's actually an incredible view of it from the building. You can go up to the roof and I've not done this yet. I need to do this, but I've seen the pictures. And you can actually see the falls from here, which is cool. I really dig that. Yeah. So I think it's really cool to see that kind of partnership and to see how it's not just Great Lakes 360 and Aquarium of Niagara, but it's the parks department and the trails, and you can see the falls and you can walk right past and go to the gorge, and there are butterflies around and all that neat stuff. It's really cool. I'm really excited. I can't pretend that I'm not. It's awesome here. Yeah, very cool. But so let's talk a little bit about the exhibits and kind of the design and the look of them. There are a couple of exhibits out there that are particularly unique, including a multi-tiered, crazy. You describe it. You're the experts. I'm just going to sound like I'm blathering, but
sort of a kidney bean combined with a layer cake. So there's varying heights. We have different species in each, layer or area. So in our upper tier, we have black bass or largemouth bass, excuse me. We have some crappie in there, I believe. One of our 2 long-nosed gar. And then in our middle section, we have some bullheads, some channel catfish, another gar. And then in the lowest tier, which is about, depending on how tall you are, waist height, chest height for younger kids, so they can get right up in there and take a look. We have some perch, a few rudd, and then our short-nosed gar. So I think one thing that really stands out with a lot of our exhibits here is how unique some of the perspectives are with them. They're all shaped, a little bit differently than you might expect. In a lot of aquariums, you just kind of see exhibits or habitats that are, a box in the wall. You can kind of look into them, but here with our newer exhibits, we kind of have the chance to walk around them completely and get a full 360 view.
Yeah, it's very immersive, especially with a lot of the interactive opportunities we have as well. I mean, in that 3-tiered exhibit that we were just talking about, the middle tier has a bubble or a pop out in the center where people can actually go under the exhibit and see the fish swimming over them, which, like you were just talking about, is a view you don't usually get. Mm-hmm. And people have been really enjoying that so far. Yeah.
My favorite is on the top end of it, the curve where you can walk in, because as a 6 foot tall individual, I don't always do the bubbles. Mm-hmm. Kids get mad at me and it's small, but just being able to you feel like you're just walking into the exhibit, inside, but you stay dry, which is this bonus. And now an obviously leading question, because I got to help with this yesterday, but so since these are, like you were saying, they're different tiers, and they're also some of them are kind of lower and stuff. How do you make sure that the fish are safe, especially overnight when people aren't here and stuff?
Yeah, so part of our closing duties for this building involves kind of tucking everyone in for the night. So we use barriers and nets to close up any potential jump risk areas. So we have a large cast net that we place over top and kind of clamp down along the sides to prevent any fish from leaving the exhibit. If they were to jump, at least they will hit the net and then fall back in. rather than, be out dry for the rest of the night. So that's one of my favorite parts about closing is wrestling this gigantic, I don't even know how large, like maybe 20 or so feet.
It was
diameter.
really
Pretty big.
Yeah. And it took both of us, one on each side,
Oh yeah,
with
job.
ladders, moving the ladders for the first part and like holding the net up. It was a thing, but it worked really well.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I can do it on my first try, then I'm guessing that y'all are, nailing it by now.
Yeah. You just have to come back in a year and see if we've perfected the technique. We can just, one-handed throw the whole thing over there and it perfectly settles down along the whole thing.
But I do think that's interesting. And I think it goes into one of the things that I really, really love about all of this, which is the thought process of like the things that guests aren't thinking of, right? They see this incredible kidney-shaped layer cake exhibit, as you so eloquently put it. And they, it's awesome. It's amazing. It pops. It takes you right there. But yeah, they're not thinking about, well, what goes into this at the end, And I found that fascinating to get to see some of that. So yeah, there was, that's cool about that habitat, and a lot of the things here are very unique and very well designed, and I mean, it all just, like I said, it pops. I really love it here. I'm biased as heck, but I love it. But enough about that crap. Let's talk about animals, because that's really what we're here to talk about. So Sarah, you just said you're really excited about a lot of things here. So pick one and blather.
Oh, okay. There's so many things I could talk about here because we have a lot of cool new animals. But I think for me, what I'm most excited about are the bugs that we have. So that is something that we really, at least in my memory, haven't really had at the aquarium. I don't know if you remember a time when we had bugs prior to this.
Not intentional exhibit ones.
Yeah, well, now we have them on purpose. And it's really cool. We have a number of different species. We have some different mantid species. We have some grasshoppers, millipedes, beetles, snails. And these are all things that, for a lot of us, it was kind of our first time getting to work with and our first time learning how to interact with bugs, how to handle them, what their husbandry needs are. And I think my favorite part of that so far has been I've always loved working with animals that make people say, ew, because you look at a bug and a lot of people are like, ew, gross. What is that? But I love getting to show people that these animals that a lot of people are grossed out by deserve as much love and effort and care put into them because they are important as any other animal here. And so that's kind of the same with like our sea lampreys. People see them and go, ew. And it's been a very unique experience to learn how to give them the care they deserve and show people what exactly goes into taking care of these animals that most people don't give a second thought to.
Yeah, absolutely. So what has been popping off for you, Nat?
I have to say my favorite series of exhibits would be our amphibian cylinders. At the moment, I believe we have a toad, some gray tree frogs, and some dusky salamanders in there, but we kind of have a rotating cast of guys who will be shuffling around in there. But one of my favorite parts of helping set those exhibits up was the scaping process of it. So essentially having a blank slate, the empty exhibit, and being told, okay, fill it up, make it look nice, make sure there's, proper, surroundings and things for the animals to just live on and in. So that's one of my favorite parts, just kind of having to deal with those challenges of it's an oddly shaped exhibit and there's a very limited amount of space and kind of access to it. So it was a fun set of challenges to work around that.
Yeah, it was especially cool because I feel like at a lot of places, we don't often get the opportunity to be as involved with this process as we were, but the aquarists were given a lot of sort of, not free reign exactly, but a lot of opportunity in terms of designing the exhibits and sort of putting our own spin on them. So it was really cool to see what everybody's sort of come up with and each person's designs and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, I do have to ask, because I don't care how good you are, and y'all are great, but I know for a fact that no matter how well you plan, no matter how perfect every setup is, there are going to be surprises. Animals will figure out a way to the one thing that you didn't want to happen. I don't mean anything tragic or anything, but just, and they'll absolutely not be able to get into this corner. And then they're in that corner and you're going, how did you, I planned. So are there any stories about anything like that? And how do you adapt when something like that happens?
Well, literally just yesterday, Mr. Hamburger, our musk turtle that's on exhibit right now. So for context, our turtle exhibits are, there's a fairly deep water section, but then the back of the exhibit is this really cool looking like fake rock work, which slopes up pretty steeply and gets pretty tall. And so we told ourselves, like you said, surely there's no way he'll manage to get all the way up to the top of that exhibit. They're not climbers. They mostly stay in the water. We come in yesterday afternoon. I'm looking in the exhibit for him. I'm like, where is he? I don't see him in the water. And it's almost like a horror movie as I'm looking up. And I'm realizing he's eye level with me. And I'm like, how did you do that? How did you climb all the way up there? I wish we had a camera so I could have seen him like haul his way up those rocks. But yeah, definitely a challenge we had not anticipated, and something that we're kind of troubleshooting how to figure out, what to do about that. We're going to have to obviously make some exhibit modifications, do a little bit of stuff to make sure he can't have shenanigans anymore.
Or we just give him a little parachute.
We could also give him a little parachute. It's true.
I vote that one.
Teach him how to base jump. And
I vote that one. Yeah, it was an interesting sight seeing a hamburger at the top of the mountain there, and yeah, that was very entertaining. So going along with turtles, we have another kind of turtle that's here, and I'm in love. I mean, I'm in love with all of them, but so somebody tell me about the spotteds.
Yeah, so we have a spotted turtle exhibit as well, in addition to our musk turtles. And at the moment, we have, I believe, 6 spotted turtles in our entire collection. We've kind of been rotating each turtle around between our main building, holding area, and then the exhibit. So everyone kind of gets a turn at being on exhibit. But yeah, we also ran into a similar situation of their what's the word I'm looking for? Their enclosure being set up the same way as our musk turtles. So again, they kind of have that rock wall facade in the background. So we kind of had to turtle-proof that a bit. But thankfully, we haven't had anyone adventurous enough to get up there.
Yeah, no one's been feeling brave in there, apparently.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's a matter of time. We'll see.
And talk about spotteds a little bit, like just in general, like the animal.
Spotted turtles, they're often a staple of many collections. I know many facilities I've been at have had them before. I know the Buffalo Zoo has a great collection of spotted turtles as well, but they are endangered in New York State. So we do have an SSP, or, species survival plan, which I'm sure your listeners have heard about before many times for our spotted turtles. So we do have each individual very clearly marked. We know exactly who's going down at 360, who's on exhibit. And then we do have our one female that we're kind of keeping a close eye on. She did actually lay a single egg recently. We're very proud of her. Big news.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, I have heard and even seen a little bit that spotteds are like personality turtles. So what are our personalities like?
Well, so we have Orange, who is our escape artist for sure.
Yeah.
Back when our spotted turtles were on exhibit, Orange found ways to do things that I did not know any turtle could possibly do. I mean, you can speak a little bit more to that than I could because you were sort of here when that happened.
Surfaces that you wouldn't think a turtle could climb, Orange found a way.
So yeah, Orange is our little escape artist. And then we have a couple more of our sort of more animated turtles. I know Yellow and Purple are quite a bit animated as well. We have certain turtles that maybe shouldn't spend too much time together because they don't get along incredibly well. And then we have our female Red Yellow, who I believe she seems a little more laid back than most of them. She kind of does her own thing and tries to ward off unwanted advances.
Yeah.
Fair. I remember I was at the Buffalo Zoo recently, and it was feeding time for their spotteds. And they did a broadcast feed, and the first turtle grabbed one piece. And every other turtle went for the same piece and chased that turtle around the exhibit while the rest of the broadcast was just chilling. And I was like, they're dogs. They're Aussies in particular, and they're just, this is insane. I just could not believe what I was seeing. I was like, how is this a thing? But we have talked about it a little bit. The name has been dropped a couple of times, but there is an animal here that nobody told me was going to be here. I knew about all of the things except for it pretty much, and I walked in and I saw lampreys, and my brain exploded. To my knowledge, there's only one other facility in the country that has them, Shed. I might be wrong on that, but I do know that Shed has them, and I've not seen them anywhere. I actually didn't even see them when I went to Shed. I apparently missed that part. So for the first time in my life, I saw lampreys. And I'm guessing a lot of people listening don't know what a lamprey is. So if we could do a deep dive and literally start off with like physically describing what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. Lampreys were a bit of a new one for me too, so it's really cool that we have them. When you picture a lamprey, what you're going to picture is they look sort of like an eel. They're a very long, slender fish, but their face is unlike pretty much anything you see with any other animal. Their mouth kind of opens into I can only describe as a big sucker with a bunch of teeth sort of going around the center in it.
And it's a perfect circle.
It's a perfect circle.
It fits Great Lakes 360.
Yeah, the 360 mouth. And oftentimes when you see them, they will be suctioned onto the glass with that sucker mouth. So you'll have perfect view of their sort of crazy jaw setup. And with that jaw, they'll use sort of the center part of their jaw to rasp the flesh of whatever animal that they're eating. So it kind of moves back and forth like a hinge almost.
That's so cool. I didn't even know that part.
Yeah.
That's really weird. So it is, when you're looking straight on, it's just a circle of teeth. Like, it is the stuff that nightmares are made out of, even though I think they're really cool.
Little portable Sarlacc pit.
Exactly. That's a great way of describing it.
I
That's
don't know
so
if you have any
good.
Star Wars fans listening, but probably.
Yeah, everyone who listens
Undoubtedly.
to my podcast
This
is a
whole field is
ridiculous
full of
nerd.
nerds, yeah.
And I very much have made many a Star Wars references before. that is like the best description. And so talk to me more about, like, what do they do and what is their, like, ecological niche and, like, all of that stuff? Why do these things exist?
So as far as what they do, not a whole lot, because the individuals that we have are kind of past their prime. They've already reproduced and they've hit a period known as senescence. So they've already kind of, either laid eggs or spawned. And then in the wild, they would live for maybe a month or so, a month or two, and then kind of waste away and die, essentially. So the adults that we have, we are keeping them in conditions that are a lot colder and a lot cleaner than they would kind of be dealing with out in the wild. And that kind of extends the rest of their lifespan. So for the remainder of time that we'll have them, maybe about a year or so at maximum, they just kind of sit there in their exhibit and showcase their adaptations and things like that. But for the most part, they're not very active. We have what we lovingly refer to as the lamprey lump or pile, because there's one sort of corner of the exhibit that they really like to just kind of pile up in and hang out there. But yeah.
It makes it weird, like weirder seeing that. Like, it's
all very
it's a
still,
bunch of
too.
Sarlacc pits. Yeah, it's very fascinating. What are they like? What do they do? Obviously the ones here are here to be ambassadors to their wild counterparts. So what do their, like, what is the purpose of them in the wild? Where are they? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so as the name suggests, sea lamprey, you would expect them to be out in the ocean, but there is actually a pretty robust invasive population in the Great Lakes right now, which is, why they're in a building titled Great Lakes 360, sort of to educate people a little bit more about the threat of invasive species, what invasive species are, what kind of ecological havoc they wreak. I know they've had some pretty sizable impacts on a lot of the fish populations, the native fish populations in the Great Lakes. And so we have them here kind of to teach people a little bit about that. But, out in their natural environment, oftentimes they would be in the ocean. They are what are known as diadromous fish. So they're making their way, diadromous fish, I'll backtrack a little bit. A diadromous fish is one that spends part of its life in saltwater and part of its life in freshwater.
Okay.
So if you think of salmon that swim upstream to spawn, it's basically the same type of thing. They'll swim into freshwater to spawn. Their young will grow up in the freshwater and then make their way back out to the ocean to live, the rest of their life before heading back to freshwater to spawn again. And so that's one of the things that enabled them for their population to take off in the Great Lakes, was because they are a diadromous fish and they can already be in both fresh and salt water. They had that salinity tolerance. So when they were introduced to the Great Lakes, they were able to take off, as many invasive species do, because they were already set up to do that biologically.
That is fascinating, and also answers what my next question was, which is, why do we have sea lampreys in lakes? So good job. Nailed it. Yeah, I can stare at those weirdos for way too long, since, like you said, they don't really do much. They just kind of exist. So here's the real question, though, which is, so they have those mouths that are like suckers. Have you guys, like, are you allowed to, like, I don't know, I'm not trying to, like, imply you do something wrong, but, like, have you suckered them onto yourself? Is that a thing you can do? I'm curious.
According to our operating protocol, we can do it to ourselves, but unfortunately, I don't think any of us, except I think maybe our curator, have actually gotten to experience that yet.
Once we're properly trained, we are allowed to handle them kind of in a limited fashion and showcase that suckering on. I think they recommend having them kind of latch on to the back of your hand, or
someplace
further up
that's
your
not
arm, like thicker,
too sensitive
stronger
with anything
skin.
important in there,
Yeah, but I do love how in the manual in big red letters, it's like, never ever let a sea lamprey attach to a member of the public.
Which,
So,
ruining our fun.
I know,
Come
the
on.
forbidden rule.
I mean, I'm just saying, as a volunteer, I volunteer as tribute. If you ever get to the point where you want to try that, I am happy to be a test subject because that would be
We'll keep that in mind.
would
We'll
be
keep you on
amazing.
standby for that.
I will try to get hired in a position for one day just so I can be staff.
The lamprey guy.
Yeah,
The lamprey guy.
yeah, lamprey tester. No, that is. They are, and the best part of this, the little cherry on the sundae of having lampreys here, is that this aquarium partnered with Peppermint Narwhal, who are great friends of the pod. We love Peppermint Narwhal, to create some limited edition pins for Great Lakes 360. And they have all of the things you would expect. You have your spotted turtles, you have your sturgeons, which we'll talk about in a minute. But there's a lamprey pin, and I haven't bought one yet, but I need to. It's going on my backpack. My backpack is just awesome pins, and I wanted, the second I saw the spotted turtle pin, I was like, well, that's going to be oh my God, it's a lamprey, and that is, I cannot believe that there is a lamprey pin just in the world, and because of here, it's so cool. I love them, but as I mentioned, kind of the feature from what I have seen from all of the promotional materials and stuff is that we have sturgeons here, and we have a sturgeon touch tank. And that's weird, but like the good kind of weird, the cool kind of weird. But so tell me about lake sturgeon and why we feature them here, because they've always been a cornerstone animal at the aquarium, even before we opened Great Lakes 360. But why are they important? Why are they here? And what's going on with the touch tank?
Like you said, sturgeon have kind of always been a cornerstone species of the aquarium. We partner with the DEC to do a raise and release program for sturgeon fingerlings, which are basically the juvenile form of a lake sturgeon. But this is sort of the first time we've really had these big adult sturgeon on exhibit. And these, when I say big, these things are huge. Like they're maybe 4 feet. How much did they weigh last time we weighed them in? 60, 70 pounds? Something like that. They are huge
Hefty.
Animals. Yeah.
Tank.
And sturgeon as a species are very, very old. I mean, they've been around a very long time, have not changed much evolutionarily, since they've been around. And so it's really cool that now that we have both these fingerlings that we're raising and releasing and cycling through, and these adults, that people can see sort of the full life cycle of a lake sturgeon, of this really cool animal.
Yeah, I do really like that. And I also know that they feel weird. They don't feel like what you would expect from a fish necessarily. Can y'all talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, so they are bony fish, and they actually have bony plates called scutes along their bodies that they use to kind of protect themselves. So when you reach into that touch pool, if you're lucky enough to find a sturgeon, you'll feel that their skin is very slimy. They do kind of have that slime coat, but then underneath there's like a much harder layer. So there's a lot less squish to them than you might imagine or kind of expect when going in. Although I'm not sure what a lot of people expect when touching a lake sturgeon. So
I mean, my expectation was it would be like any other fish that I've touched. I've touched lots of fish.
Rather than like those small kind of overlapping scales, there's, a lot smoother, a lot larger.
Yeah, it was weird. Like it was cool and I like it. But every time that I have touched, and I've done it every time I've come here, it's a very cool experience. But it's weird, and kind of like if you move your hand just a little bit, you go from like normal fish to like bony, I don't know. It's so shocking and so different. And I see people taking advantage of it. And just in the times that I've been doing it, I've heard person after person be like, weird, whoa, I didn't know that's what that was. Oh, that's cool, whatever. Have either of you seen any kind of cool like experiences or heard people talking about it, or what has the public's reaction been?
Tell you the truth, I have not had a chance to like work at our touch pool very much. But it seems like the overall consensus has been really positive. A lot of people love it, especially like younger kids. Getting a chance to look through the lower acrylic windows and just get up close with them, kind of see them face to face. But yeah. Yeah, a
lot of people I've, heard of exclaiming their surprise about how big these fish are. I mean, that's the first thing you see is, wow, that is a huge fish. And I like Nat, I haven't sort of been around the touch exhibit much, but I did hear one lady talk about how she is deathly afraid of fish, but that was actually kind of fun. And I think that's the most glowing review we could possibly have gotten.
We want her
actually kind of fun.
I mean, honestly, yeah, that literally for someone who's afraid of something, to not only experience it,
but enjoy it is a huge deal. One of my favorite things that I did on this podcast was I used to be a horrible arachnophobe. If a tiny little spider, house spider, started to come down right now, I would have screamed and ran out of the room. Even though we're recording, we're not even able to control myself. And I was like, this is dumb. I love animals. I know spiders are important. They're actually really cool. And I started to train myself. And when there were house spiders, I taught myself to let one, touch it and get on my hand or whatever. And I worked my way up. And on my first Halloween episode, I held a tarantula. And the second it touched my hand, it was that connection. And I have not been afraid of spiders since. As a matter of fact, to the point where for a while after that, I would see a house spider and I would feel a weird feeling because I would feel like I was missing something. It wasn't fear, but it was the lack of fear that I was noticing and clocking. And I thought to myself, I think to myself, that kind of touching and experience with an animal can change something so quickly. And to hear that happened here for even just one person makes that entire exhibit worth it.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you didn't catch the one time that's ever happened. So, I do think that's very, very cool.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, I've been lucky enough to have a very similar experience working with the bugs. I will profess it myself. I used to be absolutely terrified of them because I had never really done anything with them before. And I've gotten very used to working with them. I mean, I'll take out the millipedes and I'll play with them, let them crawl all over my hand. And that is just, it sounds self-centered, but that's a huge thing for me. I never used to be able to do that. So in addition to, I know the public getting these great opportunities, I feel really lucky that as an aquarist, I've gotten that opportunity too. It's been really cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I had a bandmate once I got to introduce to some sea lions out in Phoenix. And I didn't know until afterwards, but he told me he was deathly afraid of them. And then he had that experience. And we did the full on, I'll go up to it, get kisses, all that stuff. He fell in love. And that fear just melted away. So I do think when we talk about how animals are ambassadors for their species when they're in human care, it's true about, making people care about conservation and all that stuff. But that's the other side of it that I don't think we talk about as much, but just overcoming fear. And who's afraid of a sea lion, by the way? But Ben was, and now he's not. And I think that kind of thing, you never know the impact that you're having. I didn't even know we were going to get to do that in that moment with that group of guys. But even when I did find out, I was just like, oh, this is just a cool treat I get to give my friends. That's lovely. And turned out it made an impact on him, so it's very cool. Yeah. So are there any other animals in this building that y'all want to talk about?
I feel like there should be, but
I'm trying to think. You hit the amphibians.
So yeah.
No, I mean, we hit a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
The gar.
Gar.
I do love the gar.
So I actually had the experience of bringing my parents and son here recently, and they got to see 360 and everything, and it was awesome. And my parents got so excited about the gar. They are kayakers. And they really love birds. They're not too into fish, but they knew the gar. They recognized the gar. And it was what we were talking about earlier. Mom especially was like, that's a gar. And Dad was like, that's a gar. And I was like, that is in fact a gar. Yes. So yeah, talk about the gar quick.
Yeah. I have a lot of sympathy for our smallest gar, our short-nosed gar.
Poor shorty.
Yeah, the one that has the lowest kind of section of our sport fish exhibit all to himself. He's found it most comfortable to kind of hang out at the surface of the water where it's most tantalizing and easy to grab him. So
he would be such a great touch pool animal, which is so unfortunate for him.
Yeah, I think the first 5 minutes we had him in there, we're like, he's just going to hang out there. And first week of us being open, someone's going to try to pet him or grab him or something, and find out the hard way that gar have a lot of very sharp, almost like needle-like teeth. But thankfully, he's been, very tolerant of the few occasions we've had where people have gotten a little bit overexcited and maybe put hands where they shouldn't be. But I think he works a harder shift than any of us here.
It's true.
Putting his 8 hours in the non-touch pool. So. Yeah.
And for those listening who might not know, gar are like long fish, and talk about them a little bit more, just in case you're not my parents and you don't know.
You're not into kayaking as much. All right, so how to describe a gar? I guess for both types, we have long-nosed and short-nosed gar. They kind of start almost blimp-shaped. Short-nosed gar, like their name suggests, have a much shorter snout area, whereas the long-nosed gar have a very extended long mouth, so almost like kind of a alligator or crocodile. So they're larger predatory fish. They're kind of ambush predators, so they sit and wait for smaller fish or things to come along, and then they very quickly, lightning, they will snap So our exhibit feeds are actually a lot of fun to watch because we use target feeding for each of them, or direct feeding. So we have a special feed stick that we use to kind of make sure each individual is getting their fair share. But they're a lot of fun to watch eat. So I'm trying to think of what else. We have, let's see, there's the one of our long-nosed gar is a little bit more speckly than the other. We can kind of tell them apart. I don't think that either of them have names officially.
I don't think they do either. We lovingly refer to the short-nosed gar as Shorty.
Shorty,
because
yeah.
you have
A
to.
classic. We're very original.
Oh yes, but then it's very cool because their entire sort of snout area is their mouth, and they have all of these like little needle-sharp teeth along their snout or their rostrum, which is really cool.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool. And then there's one other animal we need to discuss before we wrap it up. And I'm going to be naughty and take us back out of 360 because we have talked a lot on this podcast about the love of my life at this aquarium, Squirt. And Squirt, for those listening, if you don't remember, is our sea turtle here and was not here when I started coming here. But I knew Squirt at Moat when I was down there doing interviews and stuff. And so can y'all just give me an update on Squirt? How's my buddy doing?
Yeah, so Squirt is doing great. So we've had him since November of 2023. So he's been settling in really, really well. We're actually planning on doing his next weigh-in tomorrow. So I wonder if you could give some sort of update on what his most recent weight is going to be. So we're hoping it goes well. But we do utilize training with him during, feeds. We can kind of use that target pull that he has to move him around his exhibit. So we're hoping to give it a shot for the first time with kind of implementing that during his, catch-up procedure and weigh-in. So we'll have to see how that goes. Fingers crossed. But yeah, it's doing really, really well.
Nice.
Continuing to be a little bit troublesome during exhibit dives. So whenever we have to do our weekly dives for maintenance, scrubbing things down, Squirt is just as... I don't know what word I'm looking for here. Uncaring? No, a little bit, bothersome. He just kind of bumbles his way through the exhibit, regardless of if you're there, scuba diving or not. So if he wants to be somewhere, he will be there. He kind of steamrolls over our divers and is just a general nuisance. So a lot of fun to work around.
It's his house, not yours.
Exactly.
Just saying. You're a visitor, so
It's like going over to vacuum someone's house and they keep stepping on top of the vacuum and tugging on the cord and just trying to help, but So yeah,
he's so good.
Keeping us on our toes.
It has been one of the ultimate pleasures of all of the stuff that I've gotten to do when y'all have had me come up a couple times and hold the target during the feeding stuff and actually because you have to be specific with the timing of it and get the target in and out. It's a whole process, and getting to be a part of that really meant a lot to me. I've loved being able to do that. So yeah, nice to hear that he is doing so well.
Yeah.
Very cool. And are there any conservation organizations that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I want to give a shout out to Save the Bay, Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island, conservation organization very near and dear to my heart. I got to volunteer with them a lot. That's my home state. And so they do a lot of great work with water quality of the bay and improving life for the animals that live there. So definitely check them out if you can. They just recently expanded their little beachside aquarium into something a lot bigger. So if you're in Rhode Island, check out the Hamilton Family Aquarium in Newport. Very new and very cool.
Interestingly, I literally just got an email the other day from a random listener who saw that I was because I was up that way doing things. And they were like, have you heard of Save the Bay and their aquarium? So this is funny. It is the second time in maybe a week that I'm hearing about this organization.
Sounds like you have to go.
I mean,
sounds like you got to check it out.
Yeah.
It's fate.
Yeah, very cool. How about you?
All right. I'd love to give a shout out to Project Piaba, which is an organization dedicated to conservation of a lot of Brazilian fish species down in South America. They actually work with local communities to develop best handling practices for those fish, kind of intended for the aquarium trade. So they do a lot of research to figuring out those best handling practices, how to work with those animals. And then it also helps support those communities. So people that live in those areas can rely on helping, contribute to the aquarium trade through this program, instead of relying on more destructive, sources of income like logging and deforestation, things like that. So kind of all works back into, helping the trade as a whole in the industry, and then also helping people, in their own backyards.
That's awesome. I always love when conservation includes local communities. And I don't think I've ever heard of that before. So very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. It's time now, don't you know? we've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm trying to think. My most recent poop stories,
Poop story.
probably with one of our newer animals here, our American toad. It was time for his weigh-in because, my gosh, have you ever seen a chonky toad? That's our guy. He's hefty for sure. So we're weighing him in, and he was very displeased with the idea of having to be weighed, and he chose to let me know his displeasure in the form of pee and everywhere, to the point where we actually had to go get the mop bucket afterwards because he peed so much on the floor that we had to mop it up afterwards. And it's a good thing we got his post-piss weight, if you will, because I'm sure it changed pretty dramatically from the beginning.
It turns out that he's not even chonky. He just had a lot of urine in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was not happy.
Post-piss weight is a great phrase, by the way. I really like that. That's amazing.
Weight, yes.
That's good. Yes. And how about you, Nat?
All right. Mine would probably have to be, I guess it's not like true poop. It didn't come straight from the source, but it was a mishap when I was cleaning one of our protein skimmers. So for anyone at home maybe unfamiliar with the protein skimmer, it is a type of filtration or life support filter that removes dissolved organics from water through the magic of surface tension. So it's kind of like a big tower. You churn up a whole bunch of water at the bottom, and then any crud, dissolved, poop, waste, stuff like that sticks to the bubbles that are created and then rises up to the top of a tower. And part of our job is to climb up that little tower and scoop it all out. So I had just finished doing that and was shimmying my way back down and holding the, filthy poop-covered brush above my head to kind of squeeze out of the little area where it was kept in. Because we have this protein skimmer kind of tucked away into a corner between the side of a system and then a wall. So I was shimmying my way out of there. Completely beefed it when trying to get the ladder and myself and the brush out and dropped the brush right on my face. So I've never been more grateful to be a glasses wearer in my life because I don't even want to think about what I might have caught. They'd have to invent a new disease.
Seeing your
whatever
flash before your eyes as that brush falls.
And then for the rest of the day, I was like, oh my God, it's all over my face. And people are going to know. People are going to smell it on me. I got to go home.
The protein skimmer smell is a unique one. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's
special.
So, yeah.
Nice. Very good. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it, y'all.
Yeah, it's a fun time. Fun time to work here.
All right, so there you have it, folks. We got to spend some time at my aquarium, and I hope that got you excited about Great Lakes 360. I do have my lamprey pin now, and it is on my backpack, and I am obsessed. They are such little weirdos. It's so very cool. So yeah, I hope if you get the chance, go check out the falls, but more importantly, check out Aquarium of Niagara and the new Great Lakes 360 building. And hey, maybe you'll even get the chance to say hi to me if I'm there that day. So I just want to take a moment to thank y'all for listening. I want to thank all of my patrons, especially my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Shank, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. And with all that said, we're going on a little adventure starting next week, y'all. We are going to be going to New England. We've got a couple facilities we hit up there, and we're going to be doing a deep dive on another aquarium up there that is a very special place. So next couple weeks should be a really good time. Make sure you stick around. And until then, remember, friends, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.